Welcome, everybody, to KLEAN Radio. Listening on our flagship station, 790 KABC and iHeartRadio. Everybody in Seattle, Washington, listening on Talk Radio 570 KVI in Portland, Oregon, FM News 101 KXL, and in Astoria, Oregon, AM 1370 The Cast. I'd like to welcome my co-host with the most.
Hey, Judah, how are you doing?
The great Andrew Spanswick, who's had... I'm pretty good, by the way. No complaints.
No complaints?
Oh, who listens? And you do, actually. You do listen to my complaints.
Well, that's true. I just did a tour of America, too, so...
Yeah.
I just got back just in time, so...
You know, it's actually really funny. I told you that person that listens to our show a lot that started listening. He started listening to like 10 episodes back to back. And one of the things he asked me is that Andrew actually always out of town? Because you constantly talk about going to London and Scotland. But you've been in the industry for over 22 years of helping people. I want to listen to welcome everybody out there. This is a great show. There's about addiction and recovery and everything that lies in the middle. As a kid growing up in Brooklyn, you know, about 15 years ago, a little bit before I got sober, when I got sober, this guy in Brooklyn goes to me. His name was Roy. He sounded like Harvey Firestein, and he goes, Judah, what is it that you want out of life? And I was about to say something, and he goes, shut up. You just be cutting yourself short. 15 years later, I couldn't have imagined how big my life would become and how amazing it would become. And when I was a kid growing up, I mean, I was a huge sports fan. A humongous sports fan, and
well, you still are, right?
I still am. Just, you know,
or maybe you haven't grown up.
Just well, I'm not as much anymore. I don't cry when the Giants lose like they did today.
And I don't know about
it used to bother me. But going to bed at night, or I mean, there wasn't ESPN. There weren't all these channels, and it was pretty amazing that, you know, you'd watch the Final Four and you'd watch the Olympics, and there was always this announcer at the end of the night that would put America to sleep. And in a good way, and and it was, in my wildest dreams. I mean, he was one of my heroes as a kid. I mean, he was every boy's dream was to be able to announce the Olympics, announce the NCAA tournament, and he's in studio tonight. And let's just welcome right away the great, amazing Pat O'Brien.
Wow, what an opening!
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
It took him 2 days to memorize
I put people
that.
to sleep, all right. You know, it's funny. It's great to see you guys.
Thank you.
And I love this this format because. We need to reach out, but per the sports thing, people forget that back then, without ESPN and without, you know, Fox, without anything, that we were it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was CBS and NBC and ABC, but CBS, when I was there, I mean, I did the NFL today, I did the Final Four, I did, between that and NBC, I did 8 Olympics. I did hosted the Super Bowl, hosted baseball, for God's sakes, for 4 years. And, you know, and people say, well, how'd that happen? Well, Brent got fired. And and also it was we owned all those things,
right?
And I had to be the best guy to do it. So
you were one shining moment. I mean, that was, you know, for people that aren't aware of what that is. It's in the.
Do you cry when you hear it?
I used to. I got to be honest.
Jim Nance actually cries when he hears it.
Well, I was going to actually bring that up because there is no Jim Nance without you. You know, Jim Nance is a product of Pat O'Brien. I mean, there's two different. I'm not a fan of another certain soliloquied broadcaster out there that's very educated, and not that you're not, but you know, Jim Nance is Pat O'Brien Jr.
Want to hear a great Nance story? We were checking out the set for the Olympics in Lillehammer, and we walked in, and Jim says, and I love Jim, by the way, he's a friend, but he did say this. He said, which place is the power position? And I said, wherever I sit.
And that's Pat O'Brien. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio, so give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. So you've literally done it all. You've had the sport. You know, you reached the mecca of sports as far as announcing.
Well, people forget I did news for 10 years, you know, before sports. And I started with David Brinkley. Google him. He had, in the 60s and 70s, he was like the greatest Huntley Brinkley. Yeah. And I started out as his assistant. Wow. And then went to news. I was in news in Chicago. I was on the air in Chicago. I covered city politics there with Mayor Daley. And then got sick of the cold, came to L.A. Literally got my job in L.A. because they said, do you have a tape? And I said, no. By the way, look up the word grandiosity in the big book or anything. And I said, no. And they said, you want a job? You don't have a tape? And I said, well, everything I do is good. And the guy said, when can you be here? And then I went to sports, and then I went to entertainment.
And and what happened along the way? Obviously, it's been publicized, the certain struggles you've had. When did that start? Was it always just on the back burner, or were you just able to manage it?
The invention of cell phones is one thing. No,
well, they had answering machines as well. You skipped that one.
Look, there's nothing left. I mean, it's all out there. I had one of those childhood deals where I don't have a story like I started drinking when I was 9. I don't have that story. I heard somebody the other day said, I started late. I started drinking when I was 7.
That is late these days.
But my father was an alcoholic, the great Joe O'Brien, and I never saw him without one of those little pint bottles in his pocket. My mother, who knows what moms were on back then. It was, lithium.
Benzodrine.
Whatever they could get. And doctors had no, the doctor's opinion was take this back then.
Weight loss pills.
Well, no, they didn't care about weight loss. But my father was, and I think about him all the time because I wish he would have had a way to find recovery. But he didn't, and he was a tremendous electrician. And I don't know how he didn't kill himself because he was always loaded. But great guy. It's the same story. Great guy when he was not loaded, and perplexing when he was. He left us when I was 3, and I lived with him in the summertime. But there was no beating. There's no family problems there. I had a stepdad with everything we want. I got in a band, and I think my first serious attempt at drugs. Well, we were backing up. We were a pretty big band in the Midwest, and
actually, I just read that you got nominated. You're in the South Dakota
Hall
of Fame for music.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Are you guys laughing about that?
No, I think that's awesome. It's the Badlands.
It's my second.
I'm trying to figure out who else is in it, but are there other big bands from South Dakota?
Surely I can walk out of here. There were a lot of great bands in the Midwest, so it's kind of. But we opened up for the Animals.
Wow.
And
That's
I was like
cool.
17. We opened up for everybody, basically, that came through the Midwest. But I remember we were in Sioux City, Iowa, and I was tired. I'm 16 and I'm tired.
Right.
And Eric Burden from the Animals said, "Are you tired, boy?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm exhausted." And he handed me this pill.
Right.
And I was no longer tired. I think it was one of those Yellow Jackets. Remember those deals?
Yeah.
But I also never had a real problem that I thought of.
Right.
And this is the problem with my problem, was that I never recognized that I had a problem. I always drank. I drank through high school, or I drank through college. I drank repeatedly everywhere. And my business is, kind of...
it allows it.
That's where you do your work.
Right.
In the bar afterwards. And a typical 70s guy, did all the cocaine. Timothy Leary was a friend of mine, so I did all of his acid.
Wow. Which is amazing because he was a friend of also the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous.
He also invented group therapy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Tim did a lot of things.
Did they know they were in the group?
I don't know if Tim used to say, Timothy Leary, who was one of the discoverers of acid, and he actually invented ecstasy as well. But he used to say he wished that everybody would wear a name tag that said what they were on at that moment. So he knew who exactly he was talking to.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. That's the amazing Pat O'Brien. Give us a call. It's 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Sorry to interrupt you, but so, you functioned, and I think this is a huge thing because I think a lot of people could hide behind being able to function at a certain level. And we talk about this on the show a lot, but what is functioning? If your private life isn't functioning, and I'm not saying that to you, if things are falling down, if they're crumbling, if spiritually you're not in the greatest space, is that functioning?
I functioned well enough to make a lot of money and still do, and I was employable. And the problem with me was that I had a car and driver all the time. Okay?
Yep.
So those of you out there listening, if you had a car and driver all the time, you probably
should have told Lindsay Lohan about that.
Yeah, I did actually.
You did?
No, but my point is that I don't have this big drunk-a-log. Nothing really bad happened to me.
Right.
I got drunk, carried out a couple bars. I never embarrassed myself in public until late. Now looking back on it, people still come up and people come up and say, "Oh, I remember the time you," and so I get those. But no, no beatings, no jail, that sort of thing. And I think you mentioned something, Judah, that it snuck up on me.
Right.
I mean, in the early 2000s, I began to realize that I was really, really drinking too much. And I never drank on the job. I was also pretty normal about that. But, man, the minute I got those words, "You're clear," and I drank alone a lot, too. And that's never good because...
Let's go to some calls, Andrew.
Yeah, actually, I had a question first. You moved from sports to entertainment.
Sure.
And there must have been a lot of stories about people that had problems with alcohol and drugs and deaths. Did you ever have any self-reflection when you were covering stories like that?
Not really. I had an acquaintance with the stories, and I ended up covering myself at the end. We can get to that, but no. I mean, no. The answer is no.
So you never saw any of the behavior, and
I saw all the behavior. I mean, that wasn't your question, though.
Yeah. But you're able to ignore it and just separate yourself from it.
Say the question again.
Just, you're covering someone who has a problem with alcohol and drugs, and something terrible has happened to them, and you're covering it as a newscaster for entertainment, and you weren't recognizing that you were going through some of the same issues, or... Yeah,
exactly. No.
No.
The answer is
you're
no.
just blind to
completely denial.
It's all that denial. Right?
And, I was fine. Actually, I wasn't fine. I thought I was always fine.
Right.
And that all came flying down.
So let's go to Pat.
We should get to my ending at some point.
Let's go from Pat to Pat. Pat in Los Angeles, welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Pat, you there?
Pat, are you there?
You're on the air.
I'm right here.
Pat?
Yeah.
How are you? On the air. How you doing?
I'm doing good, yeah. I'm listening.
So what's going on?
Nothing, dude. I'm just, I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to detox myself at home with Molly, and we're just...
What are you trying to detox from, Pat?
Heroin.
Okay.
And I don't know if I don't think treatment's gonna help.
Well, trying to detox yourself. Here's the problem with alcoholism and drug addiction. You can't outthink it. You can't outthink your way out of this problem, Andrew. It's right.
Well, more importantly, trying to detox yourself is really dangerous. You can try and how much heroin you been doing, Pat?
Like a gram or two a day for the past 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're going to be hurting. I mean, you can try and kick that cold turkey, but there's a lot kinder and softer and more sophisticated ways of detoxing that don't potentially put you in danger. And, going cold turkey is, a lot of people used to think that was the right thing to do because they thought that it would make people not want to do heroin again, which we've learned is not true. But also the problem now is you're detoxing from something that you could actually die while you're detoxing. It's dangerous. I mean, there's just between slipping and falling and knocking yourself on the head or having really some serious medical problem associated with your detox. So, if you're out there and you're trying to detox with Molly, I get it. Let people try things like that. Try to make it a little easier. But really...
some Suboxone, which is not very much of it, but it's like...
Yeah, Suboxone, it works with some people, and it's more for getting people stable so you can then detox them over a longer period of time. So I would really recommend, though, that you go to an ER or you contact a doctor as soon as possible. And, we have a number you can call as well and try and get into a detox program.
Pat, how old are you?
I'm 25.
Yeah, even if you don't want to go through treatment at this point, I still encourage you to get a medical detox.
Yeah.
And you might feel different about treatment once you're detoxed,
You're in that place, Pat, right now where you don't see the out, and I think everybody in the studio is in the same place. Sorry, go ahead.
Pat, this is Pat. I think he does see the out just by calling.
Yeah.
That's a great move on his part.
It's amazing being able to call.
Pat.
Yeah, I had some traumatizing experiences the past few weeks. I went home to visit my family, and as soon as I touched down in New Jersey, it was I was a kid in a candy store. I called all these same people I used to hang out with, and actually the other day a friend of mine almost died in my apartment, and I had to call the police and the ambulance, almost got arrested, between being sick all the past few days, throwing up, and just,
Those are called consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the consequences could have been far worse because instead of calling the police or the medical examiner could have been called, and you're talking about a whole other line of problems, Pat.
Yeah, and it was my first time in the back of a L.A. County Sheriff's police car. That was an experience.
It was fun.
Yeah, always. So
Pat, listen, stay on the line, just stay on hold. And like Pat said, the fact that you're calling up, and I don't think people really, you're calling up a radio show and you're saying you need help. If I don't know, I can't think of a stronger case for somebody that's sort of done and ready to get help than you're calling up saying I need help.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like he needs friends too.
Yeah.
And the wrong ones.
New friends.
The wrong ones are in his.
I've been very isolated in my apartment, and it's not really helping.
Well,
trying to get out.
Pat, that's the number one sign of someone that's an addict is isolation, because their behavior and the consequences of using become so extreme that they have to be by themselves so they don't embarrass themselves or so that they can barely just function. A lot of times it's just getting well enough to be able to do drugs.
Yeah, and the drugs aren't even working anymore. It's just like just to get by, and it's not.
Pat, there's a lot of hope for you. All right, we're gonna hook you up with a detox. We're gonna get you detox, and then we can talk about treatment after that. All right.
Just stay on the line.
Stay on the line.
Talk to Rand.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Pat.
You're welcome. Good luck. There's so many. I'm just thinking about Pat there. There are so many addictions and collateral damage to an addiction.
Right.
Because you're addicted to whatever you're addicted to.
Right.
Then you're addicted to the feeling.
And the lifestyle.
Where you get to whatever you're addicted to. Yeah. And then you get addicted to trying to get help and getting some other drugs that you'll become addicted to.
Right.
I mean, there's just so many paths. And, it's rough, man, Pat, out there if you're still listening. I mean, it's tough. You're 25. You want to see 26. And if you're on the same path you're not going to see 27 if you're on that same path now.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. We're in the studio tonight with Pat O'Brien. We're also taking your calls. One of the questions I want to ask you is actually one of the questions one of the callers have. So let's go to James in Redondo Beach. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, James.
Hi, how are you this evening?
Good, how are you?
Hi, James.
Hey, James.
I'm doing fine. Hey, Pat, it's nice to talk with you.
Nice to talk to you.
I've listened to you on the radio, watched you on TV when you were doing the news for years. I'm a baby boomer, and when President Kennedy was running for office, I actually got to shake his hand. And, it's funny that you always reminded me of a kind of a guy that was kind of what's the word? It's conservative, yet at the same time you're Irish. And so, whoa.
Is that a myth about you? I was reading that online because you're actually a Democrat.
I actually got arrested with Tom Hayden for doing SDS stuff back in the day before the Chicago 7. But I'm a George McGovern Democrat.
So there you go, man, all the way. I was born in 52. And, I just had a birthday yesterday. I just turned 61. And,
Happy birthday, James.
Yeah, Pat, I wanted to ask you something.
Sure, go ahead.
You've lived the life, okay, and you're still living, of course. And I want to ask you, did you have, while you were doing the steps, because I know you're a friend of Dr. Boss, and I want to ask you, did you have when do you know that you remember that you had a spiritual experience that all of a sudden changed the axis of your viewpoint of your sobriety of your life, and it made you want to stay on the straight and narrow, which is freedom, of course. And I had to find that out the hard way. I lost everything, and I got sober, and I've been sober 12 years. But the thing is, I wanted to ask you that because, I have a lot of friends that are still terribly into, financial brokerage, and it's an occupational hazard, is what it is.
So how about that, Pat? Yeah. What was really
the arc of a spiritual foundation is if everybody could have a moment. They can step back and look at themselves and say, that's not me. My moment was a little over 5.5 years ago, which was my last drink on Election Day. Well, it was on Election Day 2008. I was at my home in Nantucket, on a beautiful home on the beach, and I decided to go there to relax, and I had been kind of sober moving toward that. When I got on the island, I just drove, like we all do, to the liquor store to get one bottle of wine, right? I'm going to be alone in this beach house. Beach houses, by the way, are the killer of all people who have money or alcoholics. But hold on a second. And when I walked in, she said, hey, Pat, I have your favorite wine here. We got a whole case of it in. So I took the whole case and then drank it. So I drank 12 bottles of wine in a day's time, and I was found face down on the beach in Nantucket, in Matticat, by my house guy. And it wasn't that moment because I was almost dead, and they medevaced me to rehab in Minnesota to Hazelden. And it was when I landed, and I was so messed up, and I was at the end. And leading up to this are a bunch of things, but I was at the end. And I'd been in 3 rehabs before, and here I was in my 4th one. And I got the right counselor. And isn't that true of getting the right guy who looked at me and said, go look in the mirror. That's not Pat O'Brien. And then 2, you are going to die. Now, I've been told that before, but this was the first time that I really believed him. And, I was able to step back and say, what the hell am I doing with myself? Look, I've done very well since. But that was the moment where I said, I am done. And I don't think I could have been here without that moment.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You had that inciting incident that happened. Yeah. And it's interesting you talk about that because a lot of people you see on the news constantly, I don't want to mention names because, I don't want to push people away ever, but you see them have an inciting incident and you go, that should be it. And it's not, and the bottom you think, and people have a very hard time understanding this, that aren't alcoholics, that aren't addicts. They see a bottom, and for us sometimes it's not a.
Well, that's why the front office really don't like quote unquote celebrities,
right?
In recovery because they like them, but but you know what I mean, because we always mess up, and we're the ones who get in the headlines,
right? They don't want people on Tonight Show saying, I am, sober and Alcoholics Anonymous, and then relapsing, and they become the face.
I mean, when the first time that after my sex scandal, which was hardly a scandal, by the way.
It's a dream for a lot of people to be able to say that.
It was hardly a scandal, but nobody got hurt. Nobody got laid either, by the way.
I mean, hanging out with
I went through all this for that.
Hanging out with the Kennedys, that's the best you could do.
But but I think when I first went to rehab, it was the day when the Iraq War started, and they were showing the ward, and the scroll underneath was Pat O'Brien's entered rehab in Southern California. I'm thinking, how twisted, but that's why, because there's such a propensity to mess up. Now the poster men are like Robert Downey Jr., who's really followed the path,
and you.
And I am too. I think.
And I'm not just saying that because you're in front of me. I mean,
up till now.
But to people like me that grew up in Brooklyn, I mean, it's odd. It's very odd that a lot of my heroes, we have Lee Steinberg on next week. You tonight. The people I idolized ended up being, sober. A lot of them now. And I don't know what that is about me, Andrew, that I saw something, or it's just everybody was getting drunk.
Might be Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Let's take another call.
I would look at your show and I would just, but we got to go to a break. We're in the studio tonight with Pat O'Brien. Give us a call. And the number here is 800-222-5222, 800-222-5222. We're going to get in a little bit of what you're doing now, and the discussion continues at KLEANRadio.com.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.
Tonight with the amazing Pat O'Brien, whose career has still going. You have one of the best sports radio talk shows in America right now.
It's called Primetime with Pat O'Brien, and we have a large audience. I think every alcoholic in America listens to us too.
That's sober and drinking.
But it does. It comes out on the air. And I have a podcast that's becoming quite, I don't know why, but people want to hear it, thepatobrienshow.com. The book is coming out next year. I just did played myself on the Mindy project.
It's a great show on the CW.
Yeah, I got to beat up a guy and kick him in the face, which is my lifelong dream, without a stunt double. And I do. I've got a TV thing coming up, and all that. Everything is fine. You were asking though, Andrew, about being the Hollywood guy.
Yeah.
So I get on a plane one time, and I'm in American Airlines. I'm in first class. And
I just got off of there.
You did?
Yeah.
I love American Airlines. Anyway, so I'm in the third row, and this is before everything went down with me. And Alec Baldwin sees me, and he walks back to me, and he sits down next to me, and he says, "Pat, I got a great idea for you." I said, this is a great movie. Now listen, let's pretend you're the host of an entertainment show. This is before I became a really.
Right.
So you become the host of an entertainment show, and then to get into the heads of the entertainers, you have to go out with them. You start doing drugs with them and alcohol with them and everything, and then all of a sudden they bring you all their problems, and then you become so effed up that you start having problems, and it all ends in disaster. And then they say, put your seat, and he runs back to his seat. As soon as the seatbelt sign went off, he came back and said, so anyway, why do the guys at South Park hate me? But he predicted what actually happened, you know?
They don't actually hate him. They love him. He's great material.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on there. I mean,
right.
You know what? I mean, my girlfriend and I were talking about. I mean, that voice of him going, "I'm Pat O'Brien." That's
right.
I mean, you've been, whether it's joked on or on a serious note, SNL, everything. I mean, you're a living icon.
Jimmy Fallon, not really, but Jimmy Fallon. It looks like I am. Jimmy Fallon used to do me on Saturday Night Live a lot.
That sounds really bad.
Right.
And I saw him once. I said, you don't have to be so nice. There's lots of material here.
Right.
He goes, really? He said, I really apologize. I said, no. I said, let it go. So he goes on Ellen DeGeneres the next week, and he just lets it go. I mean, he's like, and I call him. I said, I didn't mean to let it go.
But do you think that's part of? You know what I find really cool is that I always say this. Sometimes I'll YouTube the old Oscars, and you'll see them just making fun of each other and having fun.
Right.
And I think part of what I'm noticing is that part of your sobriety is that you're able to laugh at the stuff. You're able to embrace the funny stuff and embrace the good and the bad. And I don't know if enough people do that.
Yeah, I'm almost pretty good at it. I mean, I have to admit, I'm not, I'm not absolute about it. Twitter seems to twit me a little bit here and there, and I know you shouldn't look at Twitter. I know you shouldn't listen, but still, there's enough truth in some of the things that are said about you. But the other side of that is that for the first time in my life, ever. Is that I'm totally free. I mean, there's nothing left on me.
And I've heard you have an amazing amazing relationship with your son. I was at a party last night. Somebody was telling me you and your son have this whole Twitter thing, or.
Well, my son and I are very, very close.
Right.
He stuck with me through all this, and he's now, sends me texts. You're on the list. He's like a rock star now. He just got back from 32 days in Europe, and he's got a Bob Dylan cover album coming out, and
cool.
he's an amazing kid. And he, after I had my scandal, which, by the way, was I was in a blackout, and I called some woman I didn't know and provided 7.5 minutes of entertainment that Charlie Sheen said, really, it was a nice effort, Pat. But nobody got hurt. It was awful. And I don't remember it. I woke up in New York on a Sunday and went out to lunch. And then I woke up the next time on a Tuesday with everybody from CBS at the end of my bed in L.A. I have no idea what transpired. Wow. That was one of the things it did, though. But what was my point? Where were we going with this?
I don't know. You're Pat O'Brien. You don't need a point.
No, I can't remember.
You're listening to Clean Radio. Let's get to some calls. Give us a call, though, at 800-222.
Oh, I know. So I'm still working on the resentments of people who bring that up. I'm trying to get past that. So, I mean...
It's hard.
I'm pretty good. It's hard. I'm pretty good at my recovery. And when you're as grandiose as I was and am, those things that might be a tough one to crack.
That's always the thing.
I can handle it.
There's a guy named Norby Walters. Are you familiar with Norby Walters? Mm-hmm. Norby Walters has an amazing saying. He goes, "You're never too big." And one of the things is always be careful, because when we drank, we were not always the nicest sometimes to people. And
I was nice. I was nice to people, though. I was.
I guess it just applies to me. But let's go to Brian in West Hollywood. Brian, welcome to Clean Radio.
Hi, it's nice to speak to both of you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit.
It's okay.
You can relate to that.
Yeah.
Pat, I have a question. First of all, thank you for who you are and what you've done, and just thank you. And I'm kind of in a situation where I need some advice,
sure.
Other than just hang in there. I'm being prepared, if one can be prepared, for his 5th back surgery, and I've had 7 different surgeries in the last 9 years with my stomach and my back and my knee. And
a football player?
Or a comedian.
You can hear, though, I'm
yes.
even though I'm nervous a little bit, I'm coherent, and I've taken all the medications that I've been prescribed for today, and I just don't know what to do because I've only taken medications that are prescribed by my surgeons and my doctors, and I don't abuse them. But at the same time, I am getting so fed up with being on medication and being dependent upon it. And at the same time, I got a 5th back surgery I'm looking at, and maybe a 3rd knee surgery.
Wow.
Sorry to
No. This is not a lifelong problem. Doesn't have to be. By the way, if you're thinking about that, you're starting to get used to them. You are. What drug are you on? Like Percodan or OxyContin? What pills, may I ask, are you on?
Oh, sure. I got them right in front of me.
Of course. But inside of me.
No, a list. I mean.
So it's all. I don't need to know. Then it's all serious pain medicine.
The ones that I've been on for years, literally, are OxyContin, Soma, Xanax, and Restoril, and Lyrica.
Well, that's a lot of different medications. You're on an antipsychotic. You're on an anti-anxiety agent. You're on a painkiller, right? Yeah. It sounds like there's more going on. Did you go in and say you were depressed? I mean, has this been a long-term chronic problem?
No. I always get asked whether I'm depressed. I never get depressed or suicidal or anything like that. I just.
How many different doctors do you have?
I just get frustrated.
Well, here's the deal. Have you found somebody who can fix it? Who can repair? I had my. I fell down while I was drinking, and a bone from my neck moved into the nerve, my sciatic nerve. It was sticking in my nerve.
Right.
And I lived with that for 8 months. I was sober during that whole time, but I just didn't know what to do. Finally, I found a doctor who could fix it, and I, limped in and walked out. But that's here's what you have to do. First of all, you have to get it done correctly. I don't know what your financial deal is, but.
I got great insurance.
Okay, so then you should.
And I'm being taken care of by really fabulous surgeons that are known worldwide.
Are you in L.A.?
Yeah, he's in West Holly.
All right. Well, off the air, I'll give you the guy. I don't want to do his name on the radio, but
no,
there's a guy in L.A. who is not that they all aren't, but he is a master at this stuff, and he knows the program and that sort of deal. But he is like the best. But outside of that, my thing is just get it done.
Yeah.
And then because now you're every day or every week you delay this, you're getting more addicted to these pills. This medication.
It's been going on for years. I mean, this is the medications I just mentioned to you. I've been taking for over 4 years.
Andrew, but I think it's very important.
And this is the problem, though. You have some underlying problem that doesn't get fixed, like Pat's talking about, and then you now have another problem where you have tolerance and addiction, and you're dependent on opiates and other drugs. So, you're going to have to deal with the pain issue first, or at least manage it, or find a better way to manage it than just with opiates and pills.
But it doesn't make any sense, correct, if I get withdrawn from the medications that I'm on before I have the 5th back surgery.
Now, that's something you really need to discuss with your doctor, and, make sure that you're using a doctor that you feel comfortable with. And, these pain medications do exist for a reason. If you're in a lot of pain, it lets you survive this period while you're trying to get the problem fixed. So don't be too hard on yourself necessarily, but also be cautious. It's good that you're cautious and you recognize that you're going to have this secondary problem with being addicted to opiates, but they're there for a reason, and if you have serious medical problems, that's what they were invented for. Unfortunately, sometimes they get overused or people become addicted and then they start taking more than they should. And that's really the hard thing, is really you should be living with as much pain as you can tolerate, with as little medication as possible while you're getting the problem fixed.
Why don't you stay on hold, Brian, and Pat will give you his doctor's. It's very important that you do doctor shop sometimes.
Sure.
Am I allowed to say that? No, I'll say it off the. We'll give you the number off the air, and And one of the, it's very, like Andrew said, don't beat yourself up too much, but also be very careful with, when it comes to meds, Andrew, he's going to have to detox off some serious medication.
Yeah, he's got another problem.
I am so ready.
But you know what? That's good, because that's a sign that most people that really there's different kinds of addiction. I mean, you can become physically addicted to a drug, but not have an addictive personality. And it seems to me that you really don't want to be on these drugs, and you don't really like the feelings of them. So and you want to be coherent and clear and pain free. So you're coming at it from a different perspective than most people that are really just addicts and can't control their own behavior.
And people should know I never really had a pill problem. In fact, I never did have one. But they should realize though that, because I've worked with a lot of people who have it. There's a process of getting off these things, and it's not as bad. You're not going to go. It's for the people that I know anyway. It's not as bad as you imagine. He's on a lot of pills.
Yeah, it's going to take him a while to detox off of all this drugs.
It's going to take a half a year, but you got to just taper down. So you're still getting your medication, but just on a lower dose. And soon you'll find, I think, not a doctor, that you'll find that it's okay, but you got to get the work done.
You know what I love about a call like Brian? Brian is so many people in America right now. And I used to watch the show House, and I've spoken about this a few times. And he would walk around with the Vicodin bottle, thinking it was all cool. And, I'm just going to pop the Vicodin, every 2 minutes. And I think a lot of people, because they are influenced by TV and by certain things, they looked at that and went, oh, it's not so bad. And these things are very dangerous. And people like Brian that don't know what to do, Andrew, they're in this, like, I need it for my health, but I don't know.
Well, what's interesting is, unfortunately, we see a lot in medicine where you get doctors who are highly specialized. So a pain, like a back doctor, isn't really a clinician on addiction. And so, they utilize these medications, and then they know that there might be a problem, but they're going to hand that problem off to another doctor afterwards. Yeah. So an addictionologist or a psychologist or psychiatrist or something like that. And a lot of people, though, the real problem is a lot of people abuse these medications because they have other feelings in stopping pain. And people get addicted to that lack of having to think or feel anything emotionally. And they get stuck in a entrapment of addiction with opiates. It's a very serious problem.
The problem is they work.
Yeah, they do.
That's the problem.
And they work on a lot of things.
But the problem is then they don't. Yeah. And then people don't know what to do when they don't, because it's a very baffling thing. Because we look at the alcoholic as the Bowery bum in the old days. We look at the junkie, but we don't realize there's so many people that are businessmen. Yeah.
Here's the other thing, too. And I've known 3 people who have died from this. 4, actually. Is that most people, and I listened to him, and he talked about not being able to sleep. So he got the Xanax, and what was the other one?
Risperdal,
Lyrica. Yeah. Funny I become an expert on these things. But I know for a fact that some of the biggest names have, let's start with, I think Heath Ledger, overdosed trying to get to sleep. Amy Winehouse overdosed trying to get to sleep.
Michael
Jackson way overdosed trying to get some sleep. He probably hadn't had the REM sleep in 5 years taking propofol. And Anna Nicole Smith, who I was very close to, all she wanted to do was get some sleep. And so what happens is you get, this is me talking, not a doctor. You take one pill, doesn't work, take another, doesn't work. Now you're groggy, so you take a third, doesn't work. This was Anna's story. And then you take the wrong one, that doesn't work. Then you take 2 of the other ones. It just builds trying to get rest. And, I think one of the biggest problems with pill takers is trying to sleep, or a lot of alcoholics, too.
Yeah, that was actually...
Not waking up,
well, and benzodiazepines with alcohol, I mean, actually, we use Valium and other drugs like that to detox, other benzodiazepines to detox people from alcohol. But people that are alcoholics know that they can wake up and take Valium or Xanax or whatever to ease their way out of their morning slumber and be able to start drinking again and not feel any detox.
Well, they become doctors. They become their own guy.
Yeah, everybody becomes their own pharmacist and doctor.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. We're in the studio tonight with Pat O'Brien. One of my, as a kid, like I said, but I had that sleep issue for years too, and I think a lot of times, one of the things that one of the reasons I always wanted to do this type of show was because I think people are embarrassed to talk about certain things, and it's embarrassing to say sometimes I don't sleep. I'm having a hard time sleeping because it affects so much. It affects your work. It affects your relationships. And for years I was scared to get into a relationship because there was no worse fear than having to go to bed next to somebody and feeling like I was in prison because I couldn't sleep. You know, and sometimes women don't always appreciate when a guy gets up a lot, or well, yeah, and you know, and so I finally had to take something. I took an aid that I don't need anymore, and it got me into a perfect set of finally being able to sleep, and it really is a life changer.
It's the hardest thing about addiction is that you said life changer, is that your addiction changes your life the way you think your life should be changed. In other words, for me, it was red wine. And I was I was a specialized red wine drinker. I actually wouldn't even drink unless it was the wine that I liked.
Right.
So I would always have to
have
the
that
car
wine.
and find that wine.
Well, you must.
A friend of mine just went up to Silver Oak up in Napa Valley, and he said they miss you up here. I said I built that.
Profits are down 18%.
I'm sure you hear that a lot. I mean, because we were in the before the show there, the show before us, Peter Dills,
right?
And you have restaurants that you frequented. They're like, what happened? Where'd he go?
Well, I really, and this isn't everybody, and I'm rare, thank God, but I don't have any problem going to bars and stuff. I am done. And if I go out again, I will have a personal conversation with God in person, face to face, because that's going to be it for me.
But you had to get to that point, and I think you're very blessed. And when I first got sober, I had a friend in Brooklyn said to me, he goes, you're very lucky. You're an alcoholic, and I really didn't understand. I was like, really? How is that luck? And I finally understood what it meant. I know, we know we can't drink, and a lot of people die thinking they can and not knowing. And I mean, it's very profound to hear you say that.
And that's the program of recovery that I'm in, 12-step program. For me, has worked. It's given me has enough wiggle room where I don't have to be perfect.
Right. Thank God.
The original book was written to be perfect. It was absolute love, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, absolute honesty, and they changed that to make it. Do I have 20 seconds to make a point? A friend of mine in the program directed the Wizard of Oz play, not the movie, the play. So Frank Baum, who wrote the wonderful Wizard of Oz, wrote this play about this Wizard of Oz. And I always thought the Wizard of Oz, the movie anyway, was a story of recovery, that everything's great, and all of a sudden there's a tornado and monkeys following you, poppy fields and trees trying to eat you, and then finally all along you could have gotten back home by clicking your heels, which should be recovery. But he said there's this line in the play that didn't make the movie, and it's when Dorothy goes to the wizard, and the lion gets his heart, and they get their brain and heart, and if I only had a brain, what else? It was a brain, heart, and courage.
Right.
So the wizard doles all that out, and he gets to Dorothy, and there's this big balloon to take her back to Kansas. And she says the following thing. She said, "But will that balloon, can that get me all the way back to Kansas?" And the wizard said, "Dorothy, you don't know if anything works until afterwards." Which is one of the greatest lines I've ever heard about recovery.
Huh. And so
you'll find out.
But more will be revealed. And
that's
how
what it is. Yeah.
How has you've been sober? You said a little 5.5 years, and you have an amazingly successful radio show. It's one of the best radio shows in America. I tune into it every day, and whenever I'm in the car, the time it's on, I don't want to lie. But how is it more special now? Is your success, has it changed?
I'll tell you what's special is looking back on it, because I'm writing this book. In fact, the book's done. Great title. It's called "I'll Be Back Right After This," and the this part is pretty amazing. But I've done all this stuff, and I invented a lot of what goes on television. I invented a lot of how sports is presented. And I'm sort of coasting to a nice life. I love doing radio. I love doing the TV gigs that I get still. And I'm kind of, because of my age, I guess I'm kind of like an icon where they call me into it. And now I get called a lot to talk about recovery. Every time somebody dies, I'm the one that's on Wolf Blitzer or something, going over my life again. Didn't happen to me, and yes, I talked to him. But I am blessed. And I have relationships with all my friends and family. And I lost, everything I lost was around me personally. I lost, some dignity. I lost heart, soul, the swagger, weight. But it all comes back.
And that's Pat O'Brien.
Special.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio. So what's, so you have the book coming out. And I do think it is. I mean, we talk about breaking anonymity, and one of the things we had Eddie McClintock on a while back. He's on an amazing show called Warehouse 13, and his character on the show, he's sober. And he made a decision to come out and say, break his anonymity in real life. And he said, you know, when he did that, it affected, his tweets changed. You know, the messages changed in such a positive way. And it's sort of amazing that, you know, you get to be in the spotlight and, you know, so many people are getting help from your, you know, from that decision, that shift.
I had people in my, one of those rehabs I was in, I think it was the second one, at Betty Ford, a guy came up and said, I'm here because of you. And I said, how'd that happen? He said, well, we're on the couch. We see you on the news. You know, that you've gone back into rehab. And my wife said to me, if that a-hole can do it, you can. And so he went to rehab. But look, and that's really true. I mean, you know, I love to drink. And it wasn't so much the drinking. It was being at the table.
Right.
And I always thought that I was better at the table with a bunch of drinks.
And I think that's the hardest thing to recover
and
from.
People are
sometimes.
laughing at me, and you know, stuff. I mean, with me, and you know.
And how is that now? How's the table now? How's
Same thing.
But you know, but you're sober.
It's like we always talk about the loudest table's always
the loudest table is the sober table.
There's a thing in my book. I guess I have to learn how to talk like that with the book tour.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you got the book tour practice here.
But when I was growing up, I talked about my father, and he used to take me to these bars in Ottumwa, Iowa, and Albee, Iowa, and all these places down there. And I remember this distinctly. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and my father took me to this bar, you know, a bar in the late 50s and mid 50s. And I'm over in the corner drinking a chocolate pop, which used to be a soda back then. And I could see my dad telling these stories, and he was such a great storyteller, and he was a handsome, strapping guy, and everybody's laughing at him, and he's drinking his beer and a shot. And he finally looks over to me. I remember this like it happened in the hallway out here. He walks over to me, and he says, Patty, this is who your daddy is. And that's all he could say, is that this is it.
Right.
Nothing more, nothing worse. This is what you got.
You asked me if I was going to cry during one shining moment. That's about it. You know, I'm about to have a reverse Barbara Walters moment here.
And the dedication of my book is to my son, and it says to Sean, "This is who your daddy is."
And it's almost like you have broken the chain. You know, I don't want to say breaking the chain because your father sounds like an amazing man, and you know your son gets to see this. Because somebody was bragging last night. It was just a random person at a party. He loved talking about the dynamic on Twitter and your relationship with your son. And this is a person I've never met before, and not a sober guy. But something touched him about the humanity, the realness that you have.
Yeah. When I went on Dr. Phil to talk about all this crap, that's sycophant there. And I was with Sean.
I heard he has great taste in art as well.
That guy. But anyway, the night it was on, which seems like years ago. It was years ago. It was 10 years. Sean, I said to Sean, do you want to watch this thing? He goes, no, I know who you are.
Right.
My dad.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about it. It's you know, he knows I'm in. Obviously, he follows my sobriety, but I'm good, and he's got a lot of faith in me.
I want to get one last call. His regular caller. He's calling from Salem, Oregon. Todd, welcome as always to KLEAN Radio.
Hi.
How are you tonight? It's Pat O'Brien's in the studio.
Hey, Todd, what's up?
Hi, Pat. I was wondering if you knew Paul Turney and the Etbauer brothers from South Dakota.
Where are they? No, I don't. Where are they from?
I'm not exactly sure, but they're all world champion rodeo guys. And
oh, that's the western part of the state. I'm from the east.
And to everybody out there that's listening, Todd is a regular caller. He calls from the Institute. He's calling from Salem, Oregon, where One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was filmed.
And he's currently a patient.
And he's currently a client.
Still open?
Still open, right? That we know.
It's supposed to be a museum. We're going to go tour.
I'm trying to get a cattle call for people to come to Oregon and flip out so that they'll fill this place up and I can get out. So everybody come here and get crazy and plead insanity.
I don't know, Todd, if that's the best part of your treatment plan.
That's what got you into trouble, Todd, and got you sentenced to 7 years in...
Surrounding yourself with people that are more crazy is not a cure.
I never asked you, what's the institution called?
Oregon State Hospital.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And they tore down, they raised the old one, and they put up a state-of-the-art one, and there's still the Kirkbride building left, and there's a cupola, and that's still the old part that they didn't want to tear down.
It's not that great a badge of honor, by the way. Just so you know.
And Todd, listen, we got to run. Call back next week. But one of the things I wanted to tell you is, you know, like I said, when we're down there, when we're up there in Oregon, we will be coming down to visit you.
I got an 800 number for you guys to call to get the visiting app signed.
You know what? We'll put you on hold and give it to our producer.
We don't want that number given over the air.
Okay.
Okay, Todd. We'll
Otherwise, maybe all those people will show up.
Yeah,
I hope they do. Please come. Come for Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You know what, Todd? I'm going to put you on hold.
Like Todd's addicted to fame here.
I think he is. I think he likes his radio calls.
And Todd, and one of the things, actually, you know what? We are going to send you something for Christmas because I've been in institutions, Andrew, on Christmas. It's a very lonely place, and you know, it's one of those rough times of year that people do. You know, they call it the Bermuda Triangle in the 12-step world. And any good advice, any suggestions for people?
You know, I don't. Everybody's their own person.
Yeah.
I think our first caller today, if you listen to him, the heroin,
Pat.
you know, there are consequences to this. So if you're sober and decide to just party and say, I'll get over it after the holidays, no, you won't.
Right.
The bottom line is,
And it might never come because you might be.
You got to find people that you're comfortable with. But everybody's got their own path. But you know, I mean, by the way, some people can drink and have fun.
Yes.
Doing that. Other people don't drink. I think I have more fun now than I did back then. At least I remember it too.
I
don't wake up and it's on the internet all of a sudden.
You don't remember it second.
But it is so much more enjoyable. I mean, you know, every day you go to work, you do your job. I mean, life has to be in some ways much bigger than it was. And I don't mean you weren't having fun because you didn't lose everything.
No.
You know, you didn't. You're one of those. And was it hard to ID with people because you didn't lose everything?
You know, we're running out of time. Let's let Pat plug his book one more time.
No.
You want to answer the question?
I want to answer the question.
Yeah. All right.
No, I love the fraternity that I'm in.
Right.
And I go all over the place. I go to Salvation Armies. I go down to 79th in Vermont. And I love and I'm glad I'm not anonymous because I walk in, Pat O'Brien, what are you doing here? And they say, what are you doing here? I said, I am the same as you, man. The exact same as you.
And I want to thank you honestly from the bottom of my heart. I was about to say the back of my heart. I want to thank you for coming in, and I want you to let Monique or us know when the book is coming out because we'd love to have you back on. You know,
I just like to come back and hang out
anytime,
cool.
please. And because it is so important. And how do people find your radio show every day?
It's on Fox Sports Radio. You can go to foxsportsradio.com and look for Primetime. Or on Twitter, I'm POB Pat O'Brien. Couldn't get my name.
And it is one of the best sports talk shows in America. I don't want to offend anybody else. This I'll say is one of the best. and one of your close friends will be in next week, or one of your close acquaintances, Lee Steinberg.
Known him for 30 years.
And it was one of my favorite people in the world. The real Jerry Maguire will be in studio next week. I want to thank, Andrew. I want to thank Pat O'Brien.
Thank you, guys.
I want to thank Maisa. I want to thank Steve. I want to thank Rand. I want to thank all our callers out there. If you're going through it right now, just hold on. Hold on. I promise you it does get better. It's KLEAN Radio.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.